At 26 meters down, the seabed drops like a staircase built for giants. Not a soft slope, not a lazy dune. Steps, clean lines, corners that look deliberate even in wavering blue light. One diver surfaced shaking with a single sentence. "This doesn't look natural." Here's the tease. We're going to test that gut punch. We'll pit waves against hands, stone against story. We'll follow geologists, freedivers, and old island tales. And we'll end on the one detail most people miss, the clue that quietly tips the scale if you know how to read rock. Quick challenge before we plunge. If you had to bet right now, nature or people, what's your pick? Lock it in. Now let's go look for proof. The first sighting wasn't a lab event. It was a weather day. Winter swells had scrubbed the bottom near Yonaguni, the western edge of Japan's island chain. A local diver took a route he knew by heart. The water cleared, and a wall rose out of blue. Terraces, platforms, a face of stone that looked squared with purpose. He swam along an edge that felt like a walkway. The current pulled. His bubbles drifted like confetti along a cliff that looked cut, not shattered. He came back with wild eyes and a camera that couldn't quite decide what to show first. The site sits where the Kuroshio brushes the island and turns mean when seasons shift. Visibility hits 50 feet on good days, 10 on bad. The bottom here is not sugar sand. It's hard, stacked layers. The main mass is a broad, tiered block, like a ziggurat collapsed sideways. The top is flat enough to rest on without rolling. Drop off one edge, and you meet a vertical face with grooves that run like rain channels. Swim along the base, and you cross boulders that look like fallen lintels, some with edges so crisp your brain whispers chisel, even when you know nobody is down here working with a hammer. Names grew where divers needed maps. The main terrace, the stairs, the loop road, the triangle pool, a niche like a doorway, a ledge like a viewing stand, a giant slab that feels balanced with intent. The water makes allows everything move, but the geometry keeps snapping into place. Your eyes count right angles, your fingers trace seams, your breath gets loud. The island above tells a long story. People have lived here since deep time. Stone tools turn up on land, pottery shards, old hearths. Jomon era finds that smile up out of dust when a new road gets cut. That matters for context. If people were here, they had eyes, they had hands, they had reasons to shape. But context is not proof, it's temptation. Then come the whispers every dramatic discovery attracts. Rumors suggest carvings near one face. Reports claim a line of stones aligns with sunrise at mid-year. It's been said that a road runs in a perfect loop, too neat for waves. Local captains point down and swear their grandparents called that spot the Steps, long before cameras ever went there. You log these claims. You hold them. You do not build castles on them. Not yet. Let's talk rock. The bed here is sandstone and mudstone, layered, hard in sheets, softer between. Nature loves to stack. Later, she loves to split the stack. Current and storm, squeeze and shake. The patient turn of salt on edges. Over years, surfaces peel along planes that were always there. If those planes cross at right angles, you get shapes that trick your eye. A clean corner is not a signature. It's a habit of certain stones. A diver reaches out, and a slab flakes under a push. That's not weakness. That's betting. A corner that looks sharp from a meter away shows little steps when your nose is on it. That's erosion working a grid. A tall wall bears lateral grooves. That's surge scouring the same path for centuries. The longer you stare, the more you see rhythm without hands. Geologists love this site because it teaches a counterintuitive lesson. Nature can draw straight. Nature can use 90 degrees. Sandstone breaks clean along two joint sets like pages and spines. If pressure and wave attack find both, you get terraces and ledges that would make a mason blush. Sea levels moved, land rose and fell. Storms took advantage. The result is a postcard from physics in a language our eyes misread as architecture. Nature loves patterns, but some features resist easy filing. There's a corner where three planes meet like a perfect keystone. The drop beside it looks like a stairwell with steps of equal rise. The triangle pool holds a geometry almost too tidy for chance. A ledge runs long and straight, then turns at a crisp right angle with no wiggle in between. A block sits atop another, with a gap so consistent you could slide a palm through without scraping a knuckle. Coincidence stacks on coincidence until skepticism feels rude. This is where the human case steps in. One voice says, modify, not build. Waves carved the base. People tuned edges. A chipped corner here to make footing safe. A slab levered there to make a bench. Small edits that turn a wild shape into a useful space. It's a sensible middle road. It fits what people do when nature hands them a gift. You don't carve a mountain from scratch. You teach an existing ledge to behave. Others argue bolder. They see tool marks in repeating grooves. They point to blocks arranged like walls. They map lines that hold angles too constant for long stretches. They talk about processions, platforms, and plazas. They float dates that place shaping before the sea rose to cover the site. They imagine a coastal hub, stepped and proud, dragged underwater by time's slow hand. Count the 90-degree corners. Slow down. Ask what would settle this. Underwater, you need more than vibes. You need micro-surface scans that can tell a tool scrape from a fracture feather. You need patterns of repetition that exceed what jointing produces. You need context finds sealed to the stone, not loose pebbles carried by a storm. You need a sequence, not a snapshot. And you need to be honest about how good the ocean is at faking a footprint. Before we chase methods, breathe and notice something else. The site sits in a place of constant motion. Tremors ripple through these islands. Rock here has been lifted and shoved, tilted and bruised. When a slab lies strangely poised, sometimes the earth placed it there with a shrug. When a ledge lines up with the horizon in a way that feels symbolic, remember that what lines up with the horizon is often what erosion left alone. Intent is the last story you tell, not the first. Here's a quiet gem. On some faces, the stone breaks into slices as thin as a thumb. They slide out like pages in a wet book. That's sedimentary bedding under pressure, not carving. On others, steps rise at nearly the same height, but not exactly. Close, not perfect. That near regularity is a headline for geology. Water loves to repeat until local quirks force small deviations. People either fight those quirks or exploit them. Tools leave corrections, water leaves wobbles. But that wasn't the whole story. Fuel for the human camp arrives in two forms: craft and culture. Craft first. When divers trace certain grooves, they report parallel scoring that doesn't follow bedding, lines that run counter to the grain. In a few spots, edges feel undercut, as if someone scooped beneath to make a shadow line. A cut that bends across blocks instead of stopping at a joint is eyebrow-raising. If verified, that's a clue. Stone breaks stop at boundaries unless a tool crosses with intent. Culture next. The island's deep past is real. People here built with stone. They aligned, marked, and made. On neighboring shores, you find standing stones, terraces, and stacked walls. The sea level 7,000 to 10,000 years ago sat lower. A shoreline then lies where divers swim now. A village could have clung to that line. Storms could have hit. The coast could have slumped. The water could have swallowed. None of that is fantasy. It's the script of coasts everywhere. There's a mini story the locals tell. A fisherman describes a road that his father's father named in his youth, a line on the bottom that fish follow. He laughs at academics who argue from desks. He has watched seasons pull sand off and put it back on. He swears the steps were always there on lean winters when the water went crystal and the current eased. His story proves two things. Memory holds shapes. Currents edit scenes. Some divers bring up small objects, a shaped stone, a shard with a straight edge, a groove that looks too neat. The ocean is a terrible archivist. It sorts by density, not by date. A thing dropped last summer can settle in a crack beside a thing that moved there 1,000 years ago. Without a sealed layer, context blurs. This is why underwater claims draw instant fire. The critique isn't hostility, it's hygiene. And still, the pull remains. You look at the main mass. You feel staging. You feel purpose. Your brain is a pattern machine wired to see intent. That's not a flaw. That's survival. The trick is to let your jaw drop and keep your pencil sharp. But that tension is the reason this place grips us. It is ambiguity you can kick. Midway check-in. If this kind of dive through puzzles keeps you hooked, say the word and keep us in your feed. One click tells the frosty algorithm that ancient riddles and sharp thinking belong together. Back to the stone. Let's get forensic. What would a tool mark look like after centuries of surge? Sharp at first, softer over time. It would cut across bedding. It would repeat with spacing human arms prefer. It would ignore joints when a designer needed a continuous line. On the flip side, what would a natural split look like? It would respect bedding and joints. It would feather, not scoop. It would repeat at scales controlled by grain size and stress, not by human ergonomics. Imagine laying a grid across a face and counting deviations. If the angle of corners clusters tight around 90 in patches that also show bedding following the same axes, wave work is winning. If you find a band of edges at, say, 83 degrees repeated across different planes, crossing bedding. You raise an eyebrow. People love consistent errors. Nature loves persistent variation. Now think dating. You can't date the stone. It's ancient. You can date what's stuck to it. Shells cemented to an undercut. Charcoal trapped in a crevice if that crevice closed on a living surface and stayed shut. Even thin films of chemistry matter. A calcite skin grows at rates you can bracket. If a groove cuts that skin and the skin regrew, the groove is older than the regrowth. Stack those relationships and time starts to speak. A different trick is microscan texture. A pecked surface carries a microtopography pebbled like orange skin. A split surface carries a torn fabric look, with fibers of stone pulled and left. A plane abraded by sand shows polish in one direction more than others. Put a fingertip on each, and you can feel this with training. Put a laser on it, and the signature becomes a data set. There's also sound. Tap tests talk. A solid mass thunks deep. A delaminating slab answers with a brittle note. Underwater. This is harder, but not impossible. Map enough taps, and you find hidden seams. Hidden seams tell you how nature plans to break a thing, not how a person did. That's long game safety and short game detective work. We should talk about bias. The lost city hunger is real. It makes everything gloss with myth. If you want a drowned metropolis, your eyes will donate blocks. Your mind will name plazas. Resist the candy. Trade it for respect. Respect for people clever enough to tweak a natural ledge into a fish staging spot. Respect for waves whose patience builds tricks faster than a diver can explain them. Respect for not knowing and saying so without shame. A concrete example helps. The loop road might be a scour path, where current hugs a wall and carves a lane. It looks paved because hard rock holds, while soft fills blow out. The curve is consistent because flow is consistent around that shoulder of stone. A diver kicks through it and feels the current grip calves like a hand. That's water writing. That's not design. Know the difference by feeling it. Another small tell hides in corners where blocks meet. If a seam holds tiny triangular chips, each pointing inward like teeth, you're seeing what fracture does when two planes meet at stress points. If a seam holds compacted sediment, smoothed like grout, that's water filling a crack, not a mason's mortar. Underwater, grout is a mirage. The ocean pretends to be a careful worker. Don't fall for it. Okay, flip again. What would convince the human camp? A carved symbol whose edges match a known style on land. A socket that holds a post stone in a pattern that repeats at equal intervals along a terrace. A drilled hole with a lip not produced by biogenic boring. A sequence of cuts that define a stair, where each riser and tread falls within a tight tolerance, ignoring bedding entirely. One of those would be interesting. Two together would be compelling. Three would be a chapter, not a footnote. There's a story about a corner everyone photographs. It looks like a perfect staircase with a central spine. On good days, you can see it in one breath. Divers point and nod. Then the current picks up, and sand returns. The spine blurs. Steps soften. The illusion changes mood. That's the sea reminding you that evidence here is seasonal. It is cruel to pretend constancy where there is none. We also need to talk about safety and stewardship. This site draws new divers like a bell. The current is not kind. Edges attract cameras and fins. Fins slam into faces. Faces flake. Artifacts get sampled. That's theft. Even if the thing seems unimportant, its position is as valuable as its shape. If it moved, its story moved with it. A responsible eye leaves things where time left them. There's another cultural layer that rarely gets airtime. For the islanders, this is not just a science puzzle. It's identity, it's tourism, it's pride. It's also fatigue from outsiders arriving with answers preloaded. The respectful path stays curious without colonizing the story. It invites local names to sit alongside scientific labels. It listens to fisher knowledge not as proof, but as map. It admits that mystery can be an asset worth protecting, not a hole to fill with easy certainty. Now, the quiet clue promised at the start. It hides in a paradox. Some of the crispest edges are also the most fragile. They break under a thumb. That fragility suggests recent exposure. Storms peeled back the skin, revealing a fresh plane. If a human hand carved those crisp lines thousands of years ago, you'd expect rounding. Heavy rounding. You'd expect a patina. In pockets, you do see that polish. On many edges, you do not. That tilts the scale. It says many of the clean cuts are new to water and air. Nature's knife, not a long-buried chisel. And still, a thoughtful middle path remains the best fit. The base is geological. The drama is earned by jointing and surge. People likely touched edges where it mattered. A notch for footing. A bench where fishers could rest. A shallow basin turned into a tide pool on purpose. That hybrid is how humans and landscapes have danced since we learned to see opportunity in stone. But that wasn't the end of it. New tools are on the way. High-res photogrammetry can freeze a season's best reveal into a permanent, measurable model. Repeat scans can catch changes and separate fresh breaks from old forms. Micro-CT of small samples can fingerprint abrasion types. Geochemical skins can bracket exposure windows. Even AI can help by classifying surface textures into likely processes, as long as we feed it clean truth and not wishful labels. Imagine a full 3D of the main mass printed on a desk. Run a finger along the loop road. See the snug consistency of its curve. Chase the tiny ramps where joint planes tip just enough to map a wave's favorite angle. Then find the one cut that disobeys everything around it. That peace is where a human story might live. That peace is worth a careful, slow return dive. There's also a future trend in underwater heritage. Fewer hands, better eyes. Remote rigs can fly a camera a hair's breadth from a face without fin kicks. Tiny ROVs can hover steady even when the Kuroshio breathes hard. That reduces harm. It improves repeatability. It lets us return to the same corner with the same lens and ask the same question a season later. Answers improve when conditions repeat. This kind of measured patience beats hot takes. It also preserves magic. A site like this dies when we force it to be one thing: lost metropolis or dumb rock. Binary thinking is an enemy here. The truth is layered. It is also interesting enough to survive nuance. You can hold respect for waves and wonder at edges. You can admit you do not know and still tell a great story. A last human moment. Picture a diver kneeling on a ledge, fingertips on a groove. The current presses their suit against stone. Their breath is loud. Their heartbeat drums in the mask. They are a speck on a staircase that could be a trick of geology or a cunning edit by ancestors. They do not know. They don't need to. Not today. Their job is to look closely, to leave lightly, to carry home a better question than the one they arrived with. Because that's what the Yonaguni Monument really is. A question you can swim through. So where do we land? Here. The base form is natural. Layered stones split along orthogonal joints. Surf and seismic life delivering brutal, beautiful carpentry. On top of that, a non-zero chance of human tuning. Edges persuaded to help. Basins coaxed into use. Little edits, not grand hacks. The scale of change that fits the tools and time we know people had here. We end where curiosity stays honest. If future scans catch clear tool signatures, we'll celebrate. If better models show every stair-hugging bedding like a textbook, we'll nod. Either way, the site does its job. It makes us practice the habit that matters most. Look hard. Ask clean questions. Separate awe from assumption. Keep both. And the next time you see a picture of those underwater steps, try this. Blink. Let the first gasp pass. Then zoom into the small. Look for feathering. Look for polish. Look for cuts that defy the rock's grain. Look for stories that honor both the ocean's patience and people's clever hands. Hold that tension. That's the real monument, not the stone. The way it trains us to think. One last line for the road. Ambiguity isn't a flaw. It's a feature. It keeps us in the water, eyes open, breath measured, listening to stone tell a story in a language we're still learning to hear.